Hey everyone, in a world where our lives are basically all online, using just a password is like leaving your front door wide open. So today, we're going to dig in and find the absolute best way to lock down our digital lives. We're diving deep into the world of multi-factor authentication. Let's get right to it.
Okay, let's start with a number. 300 million. Just let that sink in. That's how many fake, fraudulent sign-in attempts Microsoft's cloud services have to fight off every single day. It's just a mind-boggling number that really shows you the scale of the threat we're all facing.
And that brings up a pretty personal question. With that constant storm of attacks happening 24/7, are your accounts really, truly safe? It's something we all have to think about, seriously.
So let's get to the root of the problem, right? For years, we've all been told to use passwords, but the honest truth is, they just don't cut it anymore. They are a single, fragile point of failure for our entire digital security.
I mean, think about it. Passwords can be phished, they can be guessed by brute force attacks, or they can just get dumped online in a data breach. Relying on them alone, what we call single-factor authentication, is one of the biggest reasons for security breaches today. So if passwords are the problem, what's the solution? Well, it's something called Multifactor Authentication, or MFA, and it is, without a doubt, the single most powerful thing you can do to protect your accounts.
To put it simply, MFA just adds more layers of security. So instead of just one lock on your digital front door, you're adding a second or even a third. A hacker might get your password, sure, but they'd still have to get past those other layers to get in.
These security layers come from three totally different categories. Think of it like a bank vault, right? You need the combination. That's something you know. But you also need the physical key to put in the lock. That's something you have. And maybe you even need a fingerprint scan. That's something you are. Real MFA combines at least two of these, which makes getting in exponentially harder for a bad guy.
But here's the thing. Not all MFA is created equal. Nope. There are a ton of different ways to do it, and each one has its own pros and cons. So let's meet the main contenders we're going to put under the microscope today.
So on our list, we've got everything from popular authenticator apps to those high-tech security keys, all the way to the stuff you're probably familiar with, like SMS texts and voice calls. We're going to see how they all stack up based on the data.
All right, it is time for the showdown. We are going to judge every single one of these methods on four really important criteria. How secure is it? Really? How easy is it for you to actually use? What's it going to cost? And how well does it play with all your different apps and devices? Let's see how they do. Okay, first up, and you could argue this is the most important round of all, security. How well does each method actually protect you from attacks, especially from phishing, which is how so many accounts get compromised these days? And wow, right out of the gate, we have some clear winners. Physical security keys, like the ones that use the FIDO2 standard, and certificate-based methods get a perfect score. Why? Because they are basically phishing-proof. You literally can't be tricked into giving your credential to a fake website. But look at the other end of the list. SMS and voice calls are way down there. They're not just vulnerable to phishing, but also to something called a SIM swap attack, where a hacker basically steals your phone number. The takeaway here is crystal clear. When it comes to pure security, nothing beats physical hardware.
Security is absolutely critical, but let's be real. If a method is a huge hassle to use, people just won't use it. So for round two, let's talk about usability. How simple and convenient is each method for you, the user?
And what do you know, FIDO2 security keys take the top spot again with a perfect score. I mean, you just tap the key on your device and you're in. It doesn't get any easier than that. Authenticator apps and biometrics also get really high marks for convenience. But way down at the bottom, there's SMS and voice again. You know the drill. Fumbling for your phone, waiting for the code to show up, typing it in. It's just slow, annoying, and it's easy to make a mistake.
All right, let's talk about money. Round three is all about cost. Now, for this score, we're flipping things around a bit. A higher score actually means a lower cost to get it up and running. So where do you get the most security for your buck? And this is where the software-based methods really start to shine. Authenticator apps, they're usually free. Biometric scanners, they're already built into pretty much every new phone and laptop, so they're super affordable. On the flip side, things that require you to buy special hardware for every single user, like those FIDO2 keys or the older OAuth tokens that generate codes, well, they're naturally going to have a higher price tag up front. We are in the home stretch now. For our final round, we're looking at compatibility. So how well does each method work with the thousands of different apps, websites, and gadgets that we all use every day? And look at that, it's a big tie at the top. The modern methods, Authenticator apps, FIDO2 keys, and biometrics all have really high compatibility with today's technology. But the older methods like SMS and those OAuth tokens, they can sometimes struggle a bit. They often lack support for the latest and greatest security protocols.
So the showdown is over. We've seen all the scores for every round. Now it's time to put it all together and figure out which of these methods you should actually be using. Let's pick a champion.
When you look at the final scorecard here, you can see that there's no single method that's a perfect 5 out of 5 across the board. FIDO2 absolutely crushes it in security and usability, but it has a moderate cost. Then you've got Microsoft Authenticator and biometrics, which are incredibly well-rounded, scoring a solid 4 in every single category. And then there's SMS and voice. Well, they consistently trail the pack in just about everything.
This chart really makes the trade-offs super clear. If your absolute #1 priority is to lock things down as tight as humanly possible, FIDO2 is your answer, plain and simple. If you're looking for the best all-around balance of security, ease of use, and low cost, then Authenticator apps and biometrics are just fantastic choices. And, well, if you're still using SMS or voice, this chart is basically screaming that it's time for an upgrade.
So here it is, our final recommendations based on all this data. For your most critical, high-security accounts, you should really prefer FIDO2 keys or certificate-based methods. For the best everyday balance of security and convenience, use an Authenticator app or the biometrics built into your device. And this is the big one. Avoid SMS and voice calls for MFA whenever you possibly can. They are, by far, the weakest link in your security chain.
Of course, at the end of the day, context is everything. While we have these clear winners, the researchers make a great point that the perfect choice for, say, a huge corporation with top-secret data might be different than for you or me. It's really all about balancing your specific needs for security, convenience, and cost.
So we've broken down the data. We've seen the results. I'm just going to leave you with this one last question. Your online identity is priceless, right? So, is the lock you're using to protect it strong enough?